With that said, let's get to the Week 11 slate. Cannot believe we are here in Week 11. And as I said to lead the show, I don't know that there's like the amazing game on the schedule this week. But there is a matchup of top 15 teams that is very interesting, maybe not for playoff implications, but more for one, SEC title implications, and two, for implications, I would argue, on the present and future of college football. I'm, of course, talking about Ole Miss hosting Alabama on the Grove. Kickoff is set for 3:30 Eastern, CBS. It is the CBS game of the week. Alabama comes in as a 12-point favorite, the over-under 64.5 at the Betfred Sportsbook. And what I would say about this game in general is this. I think you guys and girls have listened to this show for long enough. You know, I try to really, this is the show where I take the emotion out of it. This is a betting show. This isn't a preview show necessarily. And on the Aaron Torres pod, I talk more about the emotional side of football, and this team's coming off that, and that team's coming off that, and what does it all mean in the bigger picture? But I do think emotion does come into play in this game, and the stuff going on off the field will be as interesting as the stuff going on the field, especially as it pertains to Alabama. Listen, you don't need me to tell you, but they lose last weekend. They are essentially out of the college football playoff picture. They may be out of the SEC West picture by the kickoff of this game. Remember, Arkansas LSU is a noon Eastern, 11 Central kickoff. If LSU wins that game, they win the SEC West. They're going to Atlanta, and Alabama is just playing for pride and probably a New Year's Six Bowl at that point. And so I bring it up because with Alabama, there is the pride factor. There is the psyche factor to it. And there's also the factor that, let's just be honest. Let's call a spade a spade. This team has not been good on the road the last two seasons. Obviously, in 2020, they win a national championship. There's a great core of veterans on that team. Mac Jones, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, on and on and on and on and on. Well, since that group left, which was also the same time that Steve Sarkisian left, this has not been the same team mentally and especially on the road. I think you know the facts by now, but the bottom line is in their last 8 road games dating back to the start of last year, 5-3 overall, 2-6 against the spread. So not only do they have 3 losses on the road since the start of last season, but they also have a 1-point win against Texas this year, a 2-point win against Florida last year, a 4 overtime victory against Auburn. This has not been the same team on the road. And by the way, 2-6 against the spread in those 8 road games. One of those games was the Arkansas game this year, which, if you remember, was very close early in the fourth quarter before Alabama ripped off 21 straight points to close the game. So I worry about their psyche. I worry about their emotions. Listen, at this point, you know about the offense and you know about the defense. I do worry a little bit about just, are they fired up for this game? In what, we'll see. We'll see how excited they are to go in this one. From the Ole Miss perspective, what I would say, a couple things stand out. One, I do think it's important. First of all, I think Lane Kiffin, I don't want to say that he's been great against Saban, but remember when they played 2 years ago, Ole Miss gave Alabama fits. They ended up falling apart at the end, but it was a 15-point final score. But it was close into the middle of the fourth quarter. And then even last year, I think you look at the final score from last year, what you forget, Lane Kiffin went too far in that analytics playbook. 3 early possessions went for it on 4th down, did not convert any of them. And it resulted in Alabama running away with it early. It was a pretty competitive game once Lane Kiffin realized that he had a punter on his roster. So I think Ole Miss is going to be ready to go. And I think really what this comes down to is the stuff that we talk about all the time. Besides the mental psyche, who's ready, who's not, it's going to come down to, can Ole Miss run the football? Can Alabama stop the run? Ole Miss this year, best run game in the SEC. We talk about it all the time. When you think Ole Miss, when you think Lane Kiffin, I think everybody assumes it's a high-powered passing attack, except it's really not this year, not with Jackson Dart. It's the run game. Best in the SEC, 3rd nationally behind only Air Force and Army, who don't even try to throw the football. And Alabama has been susceptible to stuff on the ground. Remember, this was a team that gave up 5 yards per carry against LSU last week. This was a team that gave up 182 yards and 5 yards per carry against Tennessee. So the good run teams, the balanced run teams, the balanced offenses in college football have had success against Alabama this year. And then finally, from the Alabama offensive perspective, I just worry about consistency. By now, you know the deal. You don't need me to tell you, but there's no consistency. There's no rhythm. And I think more than anything, I don't think Alabama has an identity when it comes to the offensive side of the football. And it's something that's been discussed on every show, everywhere, but it's worth reiterating here. This team's identity on offense is basically Bryce Young having to do superhuman things to keep them in games. You expect at certain schools, yeah, maybe the quarterback's the best player and he's got to do things to keep his team in games. Maybe Hendon Hooker last week against Georgia, maybe Caleb Williams at USC. The quarterback should not have to be routinely bailing out the offense. And at a certain point, you can only blame the O-line or the wide receiver core or this or that so often. To me, it comes down to Bill O'Brien. It comes down to the offensive coordinator spot. I don't think Bill O'Brien's going to be back next year. Now, I think Saban's going to work the phones behind the scenes to try to get him a head coaching job so he doesn't have to fire Bill O'Brien. I don't think he's coming back. I think this offense struggles. And so when it gets to my thoughts on this game, I'll be pretty straightforward. I talked about it on the Aaron Torres pod this week. I think that Alabama has the wrong person at offensive coordinator, the wrong person at defensive coordinator. And I'm not sure this fast tempo, fast-paced offense that Ole Miss runs, it put Pete Golding on his heels 2 years ago. Last year, it wasn't really an issue simply because of the fact that Alabama got up so big early on offense that the Ole Miss was playing nothing but catch up at that point. But when I look at this game, I think it's close. I think Ole Miss has a chance to win. And I'll tell you, in terms of the Betfred Sportsbook, Ole Miss is a 12-point home underdog. I like Ole Miss. One loss to a good LSU team, beating everybody else. Won at Texas A&M the last time we saw him, coming off a bye, extra time to prepare. Lane Kiffin is in the media saying that his team is not overlooking Alabama, saying that Paul Feinbaum is giving Nick Saban goat juice, or goat fuel, I should say. In other words, Paul Feinbaum questioning Nick Saban only fuels him more. I think Lane Kiffin has his boys ready. I think he has them focused. I think this game's close and low scoring. I would lean Ole Miss plus the points at home here.